Welcome to Elite Expert Insider Podcast, where we will inspire, motivate, and educate entrepreneurs, innovators, and growth seekers. Brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, making the best and brightest in the industry #1 best-selling authors. 80% of people say they want to write a book. We're assuming that's the same for you. If so, contact us at www.eliteonlinepublishing.com and make your book a reality. It's Melanie Johnson with Jen Foster. Jen, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Hello, everyone.
Well, we want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and welcome. We're so happy to have you here. We always bring wonderful stories that make your day brighter, happier, usually learn something along the way. And you know what? Today we have a best-selling author with us who is going to share her experiences and her story about her book, how she got there, about baby boomers, leaving a legacy, which is right up my alley from my TED Talk about leaving a legacy and capturing all those stories. But first, we want to make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And of course, if you're looking to become an author, of course, a best-selling author, because that's what we do at Elite Online Publishing, we hope that you'll join us. Find us on our webpage, eliteonlinepublishing.com. Go to the contact section and just fill out the survey form there. And we'd love to hear from you and have you become one of our authors. So Claire is here today. She is a best-selling author. She wrote the book Most Wednesdays. We were really proud that we propelled her book to a #1 bestseller on Amazon. Congratulations, Claire.
Thank you so much. Hi, Melanie. Hi, Jen. And I have the book cover here with your sticker on it for #1 bestseller. So thank you so much for all your support.
So tell us, how did the book Most Wednesdays come about, and a little bit about the book so people listening know what the book's about and how it started?
Well, it really started with me just jotting down some notes. I thought about family history, where my family came from and things like that. And it quickly evolved into a story, which I didn't expect to write. And then I realized as I was writing it and finding information and talking to people, mostly from the baby boomer generation, because that's my generation, 1946 to 1964 is a huge part of our population that are baby boomers. Our parents are all called America's greatest generation. And so I got inspired from the things that I was finding. And as I was talking to people, they said, oh, you have to get this out. Or they'd say, oh, my dad was in World War II in Europe or the Pacific, or my mom was a Navy nurse, whatever. So it just evolved into something that became not just my family story, but hopefully an inspiration for others to find their family stories and to record it and to get those personal stories from parents and relatives. So that's what I've done with this book.
That's great. Well, and like you said, the subtitle of the book is a story of family, fun, and values for baby boomers to remember. And I think the best thing about this book is like you said, it helps you to remember what are those family stories? What are those things that we can pass down from generation to generation?
Mm-hmm. And once you get them into some form written down, you don't have to, worry about remembering them. You can get your family members that are around to tell you stories. I found things like letters that my father had sent home to his parents from when he was in World War II in Europe. We have a diary from my aunt, who was a Red Cross worker during and after the war in Europe, and she put a very detailed account. My mother's 89. She just turned 89, but most Wednesdays, it's because most Wednesdays I spend with her, and she told me stories. So it was fascinating for me to learn things that I really didn't know. And many people will say if their parents, particularly fathers, because it was mostly men that were sent overseas, don't talk about their stories. They just, they did that time, they come home, they don't discuss it. And unless somebody's asking them, that part of their history is gone. So I'm hoping to inspire others.
That's really changed over the years. I mean, from the Vietnam War and finding out the reactions, like before the men would just stuff it in and try and make that transition. What are some, I just love listening to my parents' stories as well, and you always come up with new information. What were some of the aha moments that you may have had during this process? Maybe not just like you said, you find new letters and stuff, but what were some of the other light bulbs that maybe went off on your head that this will help generations of your family down the road?
Well, even some things that I already knew. I knew my father was a World War II soldier, even though he didn't talk about it. I found out little details, like he was sent over to Europe during the coldest winter there had been for 40 years. It was 10 degrees below zero, and they had no support. What was a coincidence for me is that my mother, at the same time, although she was a teenager, she was growing up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and that was the site of one of the sites for the Manhattan Project. Her father actually designed power plants that were designing the atomic bomb. Now, it seems kind of simple in hindsight, but if that site had not been successful, my dad would have been sent for an invasion of Japan. A lot of people would have been sent for an invasion of Japan. And I dedicate this book to our freedom because really I gained such a great appreciation for what that generation did. Because if they had not been successful, the world would not be like it is today. World War II affected everyone on the planet. And although I'm not a military history buff, my husband is, and things would have been very different. So I dedicate it to our freedom because we would not have that after that point in time if they had not succeeded as they did. So that was a pretty big aha.
Right. That's a really good story. And so tell us, most Wednesdays you spend with your mom and you ask for questions. Do you record them? Do you write them down? Tell us kind of a little bit of the process of how you got all these stories into the book.
Well, I started just talking to her about, questions that I had. I did record some of the interviews.
Just using your phone, or you're like an audio phone recorder?
I have a little audio recorder. I
Yeah.
forget what the name of it is, but it's just a very small little thing that you can just, take and put down. And because I wanted to record her voice.
Mm-hmm.
How often do we have recordings of the voices of our family members? We delete messages off the phone and all. So I wanted to record her voice for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I would just be in front of the computer and call her up and say, Mom, what happened here? Or who was this relative? Or, what was it like when you were in Oak Ridge? Or, just whatever random questions came to mind, so that I felt like I really got a full story. Of course, you could never be done. I could write on and on and on. Everybody could write on and on and on. But I just wanted something that would give me a basis for the family so that we could have that legacy and what they did. And even as far back as my parents' or even further back from that, I have information in there from my maybe another great-grandfather. So just.
How do you think this transcends to help future generations by having this knowledge? Let's say your great-great-grandchildren being able to go back and read this. What kind of impact do you think that'll have?
Well, I think it's interesting just from knowing where they're from. There's a lot of focus on that now with the Ancestry.com and 23andMe. People want to know their roots. Mm-hmm. So it's good for them to look at it that way. But I also, as I was getting this information and collecting written information to this form too about their values. The values of America's greatest generations were strong. They were salt of the earth kind of people. And conversations about values are everywhere now. We're kind of wondering what happened. Where is our society now? What are those bedrock points? One of the pieces of paper my father gave to me was even rules for young people. And it was all about those values and conduct and things like that were passed down. So I think, it's nice to look back at the history, but it's also nice to think about, what was the goodness in the time past? And is it better than today or not? That's a question too.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us a little bit about your collecting. Now, I heard you have an Etsy store. So tell us a little bit about that and how that works.
Oh, well, I love vintage items. I love things from the 40s, 50s, some 60s, not so much from 60s. And as I was writing the book, I was writing about some of the things my parents got as wedding presents. And then I would go to a store somewhere and I would find like that exact thing, the 3 nesting ashtrays back when, ashtrays was like an appropriate gift to give someone.
Right. Right.
And then I'd find them, and then I'd find another set that were the same. And I have clothes, I have earrings. I'm wearing some of my vintage earrings. I love to collect these kind of things. It's nice because they're quality, they're different, they're made in the USA. I have a terrible habit of collecting hats, and I like them to either have designer labels in them or union made in the USA. They're just pretty. They're not something that we use so much for wearing these days, but I use them as decorations in the home.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I like to collect those pretty high quality things from a time gone by.
Yeah. Isn't that fun when you're thinking about something or writing down something and then it just shows up in your life? I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Well, so I'm an Etsy newbie. I would say I've bought things on Etsy. I didn't know you could have, I always thought it was handmade type things, but you can sell vintage things there as well.
Yes, they allow you to sell handmade items, craft supplies or materials to make items with, and vintage. I was surprised to hear that too, and I was so happy that they would allow vintage things. I think it has to be 1999 or before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
I have a few things that qualify for that I was thinking of where I was going to put them. And I have a perfume. I'm like you, a collector. I have these big, large perfume bottles, these factices. And I'm like, I have way too many of these. I need to get some of them that I can't display that are in a closet and sell them somewhere. So that might be a good thing. So you helped me out.
mm-hmm. And they're beautiful. Valentine's Day is coming up. There's always an occasion to buy something vintage, wear something vintage.
Yeah.
So I'm like you. I have too many.
Yeah.
I've overdone it. I'm keeping my very most special things, but it's time to let other people have them.
Yeah. Well, tell us one of your favorite stories out of your book.
Oh, goodness. Well, I guess one of my favorite personal stories in there is about travel. My parents loved to travel, and they thought that traveling was as much an education as anything that you do in school. So they would take us out of school, or we'd go on summer vacations. And one time they got this idea that we would drive to Alaska. Now this was back in probably 1969. And it was it was a long trip. It was a month-long trip. And so they had to do a lot of preparation about it. And we drove across, I live in Maryland, and my parents were in Maryland at that time too. So we drove first across most of the United States up through Montana into Canada. And then we drove 1,200 miles on the Alaskan-Canada highway.
Wow.
Today it's paved.
Yeah.
Back in 1969, it was pre-pipeline, and there was no paving.
Wow.
It was 1,200 miles of dirt road.
Wow.
So at one point, the trailer that we were going to camp in just was absolutely falling apart, and then we had to decide if we were going to continue going on or turn around and go home once the trailer was fixed. But we went ahead, and it was just beautiful. It was just an experience of a lifetime that we all shared together. So that was my favorite stories. I did put it in the book, but I have clear memories of that one.
Yeah.
So dirt roads and no seatbelts in the back seat either, right?
Yeah.
I told my mom the other day, she said, "Oh, I forgot to put my seatbelt on." I said, "I know, because your generation didn't have seatbelts. You just put your arm out. Don't let the kids go through the windshield."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's so great.
When we
got I remember laying down in the front of a motorhome, like in the window in between the steering wheel and the dash and then the windshield. And I remember laying there, like probably 3 years old, and sleeping there with a blanket as we were traveling. Like it's just like in the windshield.
You would wonder now how we ever survived.
Yeah.
We didn't have all these safety precautions that we have now.
Yeah.
The world's a dangerous place, and that was part of the fun of it. We had wood burning sets and things that exploded, and
Well, I love your book because it's patriotic in a way that it's part of American history. It's not just your stories. It relates to everybody that, light bulbs go off as Jen's telling her story of being in the windshield, and it's really part of Americana. I think the book Most Wednesdays is such an Americana book of the stories of that period of the life of the baby boomers. And I know you have another book you're thinking about writing. Is that right? I mean, you're talking about having another one coming up.
Yes, it's a totally different topic. I didn't plan this either, but as I was writing Most Wednesdays and realized that I was dedicating it to our freedom, and I do have some short history in there of World War II, not too much, because nobody needs to read this for a history book. But it was just, even though I studied that, I guess, in high school, I didn't remember any of it. And then it was just unbelievable when I went back and looked at what was going on. So I dedicated it to the freedom, and I wanted to start a series of things just about taking time to appreciate something. So the first one, most Wednesdays, is in appreciation of our freedom, which our parents rescued for us. And the second one I have, it's in the works now, it's called Thank You for Feeding Us. We seem to have ample food, and a lot of us do anyway, in this country. And we don't really think about how we get it or the hard work that goes into it. And I have a farmer's market right up the street from me, so I go there quite often and talk to the farmers. And I have a neighbor who works with people in aquaculture. So she offered to get me together with some people that work in that, oystering and fishing and things like that. And just, stop and think about the delicious food that we have in ample supply today. So, excuse me, hopefully I will have that done before too long and ask your assistance to get that one to a #1 bestseller also, but it'll be called Thank You for Feeding Us, in appreciation of our farmers and food.
That's wonderful.
And like the Etsy shop that I have for most Wednesdays, I'll have a product that I've developed that people can use to kind of cut down on single-use disposables and focused on our food. So more on that later.
Okay, awesome.
I remember in the days of the farmer's market when I was a kid, we'd go to the farmer's market pretty regularly in Detroit, Michigan, and the food was always a bargain at the farmer's market compared to the grocery store. Now I go to the farmer's market and it's triple the price it is at the grocery store because it's organic, it's fresh, it's not genetically modified. And so that's been a big shift from before to now as well. We appreciate, that's another way to appreciate the foods that we had then. Something that we really took for granted that was so whole and wholesome that now it's a premium. It's kind of interesting.
Because it's actually, fresh and ripe and tastes good.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Exactly. Well, we look forward to that. So tell us, Claire, where people can go to find your book.
So I think the easiest way to find it, and here's the cover again. It's called Most Wednesdays. If you just go to Amazon.com, look under books and search under Most Wednesdays, you'll find it there in both the paperback and the Kindle version. Okay. And then for my Etsy shop, I'm not real good with technology and I know how I sign on, but I think what people would do is go to etsy.com/shop/Most Wednesdays. So it's all the same name, Most Wednesdays. So maybe they can search under Etsy for Most Wednesdays, but I'll be putting lots more things on there.
That makes it easy. All the same name. I love the branding. See, you're real smart. You branded the same all across.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and make sure you look up Most Wednesdays and buy her book. It's fabulous. You're going to love the stories. Again, it's very Americana, and we encourage you to write your legacy and tell your family stories as well. Even if you don't publish it and make a book, but get it written down, get it recorded on video, get it somewhere so that knowledge is there for the next generations to learn and grow and be better than we are. We want the next generation always to be better than we are. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast and look us up at eliteonlinepublishing.com, and we'll see you next time. If you'd like to create the most powerful advertising tool for your business, contact us at eliteonlinepublishing.com, where we will help you create, publish, and make your book a #1 bestseller and show you how to get new leads and more revenue for your business. If you'd like to check us out on our Facebook page, we have a free book for you as our gift. Just go and click free book. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment for our podcast. We would love to hear from you.